Hey everyone, so in this video I'm going to be going through just putting some hair on these guys here because I don't want it to look just bald like this. So I'm going to be going through, whoops, sorry, that might be a little bit loud. Maybe just going through a few hairstyles, or maybe just stick to one. Maybe I'll stick to one for these three, and then the rest I can probably just kind of experiment with some. Or if I feel like it, I can just do it in different views. So maybe, I think for this one, because this guy looks pretty similar throughout these images here, I'm probably just going to keep the same hairstyle. So I'm just going to be doing a standard hairstyle, which is, a very straight, classic Asian or anime guy hairstyle. So as you can see, a little bit of this here. I already did some hairstyles for the girl, but anyways, that's besides the point. So if I want to do your average hairstyle like Haru from Free or Sao, Kirito, or some other guy like that, that's a very simple kind of hairstyle, and I think it will work pretty well. So first, we of course just want to start off with bangs. I like to start off with bangs first, just because it kind of gives a good idea of where to start. I like to start off around the hairline. I like to also start a little bit above the initial hairline that I drew, just to give it some insurance, so it doesn't look too low. I would say it's about up to here instead. So if I'm going to make a more side-swept look, I would just kind of direct my bangs, making sure that I have both big clumps. And because it's straight, some of the bangs are going to be side-swept a little bit. But notice how everything is very straight in a similar direction. So I'm not, making it spiky or anything. I'm just, pushing it down towards gravity. Notice that every time I draw hair, I draw these strands, I make sure that they are curved a little bit, because it's going through a curved object, right? So you don't want to just make a straight hair, feel. You want a good amount of, curvature, because you're dealing with a different hairstyle here, or you're just dealing with a human head here. So I put a little bit of a paper just so you don't see the back here. So I think that works. So once again, notice how also there's an origin line here, or there's a little origin point. I make sure that all my bangs kind of point to that direction. And I can also just curve it out more. Maybe I can hide his ears a little bit. This is, your classic kind of male hairstyle. Of course, this can be altered. But notice how I'm also overlapping on top of strands. I'm not just going and sticking to the scalp. I'm making sure that I'm, putting in some overlaps. I'm putting in the center of the line, the center of the hair here, so we can have some head height. And my head height or my hair height always goes over the scalp, so I'm not sticking to the scalp. I am going over it. And I'm, pushing this down towards gravity. If I want to have some frays here and there, I can go ahead and do that. So far, so good. I can add some, stray hairs here just to give it some more interesting look, some of a more interesting look here. And I can even add the back of his hair here, so it looks more like it's coming down naturally. So that's one way of drawing hair. Let's draw the side view of this version. Just picture this just going sideways. So you can still see the bangs here. You can still, you can basically just see this one half here. So here we have the bangs going over the drawing, or going over the head, kind of having a certain direction. Here is the bangs that kind of go over his face. Here is the back of his head. Of course, if you want to show more information about what his hair looks like, that is a good chance that a side view would do very well. So I'm kind of putting in some layers here to give it some more girth. I'm giving also a little bit of a nice, some cowlicks here and there just to give it some personality. Notice how I also put hair in front of the ear. Make sure you don't just block and leave out the ear itself, like just, leave a blank space here. Make sure it continues downward. Or make sure it continues through the hair. And here we have the end of his hair here. So notice how, because everything is straight, it goes down through the gravity. And now let's go ahead and do a mix, which is our front and side view, or our 3/4 view here. So I want to add a little bit of a, you can add that if you want. Actually, that looks better that way. You can add a little lip down here. So now let's go ahead and get started with the 3/4 view, which is pretty easy. We have our bangs, once again, just start from an origin point. Drop it down, curve it, add some big, medium, and small shapes because that gives a more dynamic look rather than just something like this. Whoops. Some people would just do something like that. Or if I were to make a bad example, they would do something like this. You see how when they do that, it doesn't look like it's form-fitting. However, when I'm drawing here, I make sure that my lines are controlled and flowing and not choppy at all. I make sure that every line has a direction and a purpose, and that is the beauty of drawing hair. You have a purpose for it. You don't just go in multiple directions. So let's draw in the bangs that kind of frame his face. Let's draw in the top side of his head, top part of his hair, and then curve it downward. Notice how it gives some nice room for the hair to flow through. And then here's the end. So you don't have to keep this part very detailed. You could just indicate it, and that'll be pretty much that. So here is the 3 sides. Now let's go ahead and draw the back side of this. If we want to draw the back side, we can go ahead and kind of just indicate where his front bangs are. And because there's a hair kind of framing his face, part of his face will be covered by his hair. So I'm going to go and erase these features here because realistically we wouldn't really see them very well. But notice how I'm making sure that everything looks similar. And here we have the back of the head. We can draw in the ends of his hair here. He has pretty long hair. By just doing that, following the form, you can erase this part, the back, or your guiding lines, and then add some more strands. You can add some more strands to give it some more personality if you want. If the front wasn't good enough, you can also add a little bit of a back. Here we have, once again, these 2 views here. If we're going to be looking up at it, just make sure that it starts from this point and then fans out and then kind of, once again, wraps around his hair. So this will have a bit of a higher arch rather than a low or straight arch like these 3. It's a higher arch because you're looking up at it, and there's a more curvature form from the head up. So everything's pretty much very similar. You just got to change a little bit of the angles. And I like using this hairstyle just because it's pretty standard. I don't have to get creative with it. And when it comes to spiky hair, for example, spiky hair is very niche. Well, actually, not really that niche. It's a generic hairstyle, but it's hard to really draw that kind of hairstyle because everything's going different directions. It's not really that controlled. You would kind of have to indicate some things and kind of even simplify some things. For instance, like Bakugo from My Hero Academia, his hair is not rooted, it just looks like an explosion. And then, for instance, Naruto's hair is not much detail to the strands, it's just a shape, like a little, like little speech bubble. But when it comes to straight hair, you can, see where the hair is going, and you can control it much easier than spiky hair. Same thing goes for wavy hair. Wavy hair is a little bit challenging as well with the waves and all that stuff. But I will go through all of those kind of types of hairstyles when I get to the hair section. So anyways, so once again, same process downward. It's also curved, but you see more of the top here, so you have more information on the top. So you can sort of see the top part of his bangs that cover through. And then once again we see his hairline, and then it crawls back down. If you want to erase the excess lines, that is a good way to do it. That helps a bunch on cleaning it up, and you can add some extra lines like so, just to give it some more texture. So that is how you draw hair on this guy in 5 different ways. So straight, side view, and 3/4, and then these 3 down here. Anyways, that's pretty much it for this video. Let me know what you guys think, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.